So now let's get our form worked up to actually post books to our database and then re-render the books that we have here. So let's go back to our code. Let's go back to our create book. I'm going to open up the HTML too, because we'll probably need that in a minute here. All right. So let's go down and look at this on create book. And let's change some stuff real quick. So instead of this.books.push, let's change this to unshift. Because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense that we're going to reverse the order of the books to get the most newest books at the front, but then when we add another book, it's going to add it to the very end. So if we use unshift, it's going to put it at the top, the front of that this array that it's going to iterate over. We're also going to add this .db service .make book. Make book doesn't exist yet, but we are going to build it very soon. It's going to be a method in that database service. So we're going to give it its first parameter and only parameter of this dot books. So that is the array of books in this component here. Index of 0. Dot subscribe. And then again, this first parameter here, book, that we're going to call it, is the return of one of these service methods. It's that observable. So we're calling it book this dot books 0, again the very first index, that's that book we just would have created. This dot books index of 0 equals the book, equals that data that just came back. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and make that. So let's go back to our database service. And now we're going to need to build out this make book method. So we'll do make book. And we're going to add a parameter of book because we want to give this method a book when we, and we're already doing it. In create book, when we call that on create book, we're calling out to this method make book, and we're passing it a value that is the book that we would have just created in the client. So here we're going to have a value or a parameter called book, and its type will be book. We're going to return an observable of type book array, and we will return this dot http dot post book this dot db URL book HTTP options. All right, so it's not happy right now, so let's real quick go ahead and add those HTTP options. Const HTTP options equals headers new HTTP headers. We're going to open up both parentheses and curly braces in here. We'll set content type to application /JSON. This should be starting to look familiar. This section here, this is just standard headers that we've been using, but this time we're using HTTP headers. They go along with the HTTP client. So if we're looking back down here at this make book, we are receiving a value called book. We are going to post to our URL, our DB URL. We're going to post this book here. It's our second parameter. And then instead of opening up that body of the request like we usually do with our fetches, we just pass in our HTTP options here, which we have defined up top here. And this will append those headers onto our request so that we can make this request. All right, we actually do have one more thing to change before we can actually fire this. And if you were trying to test it already, you'll probably encounter an error. The decorator at injectable has to be directly above the class that it is taking care of here. So the const headers have to be above the at injectable and below our imports here. Awesome. All right, so now that we have the logic here for the post setup, let's go and tweak a few things in our create book component here real quick so we can get the information to display and show up more like we want it to while we're posting. So let's set up an array for genres and also one for ratings. In this array, I'm actually going to go back. Where is it? Here we go. So I've got reference book, fable, science fiction, crime detective. So I'm going to go ahead and add those real quick. I'll make it easier for myself. And if you have a, your enum might look different than mine. So your values don't have to match up to what I have here. And if you don't have an enum, then you don't have to worry about that part. So now let's go ahead and set up our ratings here. So I'm going to make an empty object and a comma. And because we have different, we have 5 different levels of ratings, I'm going to add this 5 times, and then I'm going to go grab that star that I copied earlier and come back here. And inside the first object, I'm going to add a value property, set it to 1, and then give it a view property and set it to that star. So this is a 1-star rating. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate the same pattern for the rest of them. Alright, cool. So now I've got ratings and I have genres. So I can plug those into my template here. So the first thing I'm going to do is change how I'm setting up my select here. And I just need to change my options. So I'm going to cut out these 3. Oh, going to cut them out. And then on this option tag, I'm going to add an ng4 directive. And I'm going to say let g of genres value, so the value of this option, we're going to set to G. And then instead of having reference book show up here, we're going to use string interpolation to add the view here. And then we're also going to change our ratings labels and options here. Very similarly to how we did the genres, I'm going to select the all bottom 4 options. I'm going to cut the text from star. And on the option, I'm going to add another ng4 directive. I'm going to say let rating of ratings. And I'll add a value equals. I'm going to open up a set of quotes. Then I'm also going to open up a set of curly braces so I can do some interpolation again. And I'm going to add rating dot value. And then in between the 2 option tags, I'm going to use more interpolation for rating dot view. Alright, so I'll save this and let's give it a shot and see if it works. So I've got test, author, reference book, year 1994. And now I can see our star ratings are in here too. So I'll add book, and there we go. Here's my post. I've got a non-existent book. Let's change this. We'll do CSS and HTML by John Duckett. Reference book, 2004. It's a real good book. And there we go. And I can just keep adding books to it now. And not only can I post, but it's automatically updating. I've got both get and post on here. We've got styling, and we have taken a short and brief little walkthrough through Angular. We've looked at services, we've looked at components, directives, decorators, all kinds of stuff. So good job keeping up with this, and good luck on the rest of Red Badge.